They tell you that to become an angel of death is to ascend. They lie. It is not an ascension, it is a meticulously choreographed erasure. I have spent 347 years perfecting the art of being a void where a man used to be. My name is Kael Voranis, or so the brass scrolls in the Reclusium claim. To me, it is just a sequence of low Gothic phonetics used to identify a specific biological asset. I don't remember choosing it. I don't remember the woman who first whispered it into my ear while the soot of Absalom Prime fell like black snow outside a rusted hab unit. I only know the weight of the ceramite and the cold, sterile logic of the kill. The waking is the worst part. Every day, the sarcophagus, my coffin, my cradle, sighs with a hiss of pressurized nitrogen and recycled oxygen. The restraints snap open like the jaws of a predator releasing its prey. For 3 seconds before the chemical cocktail is pumped through the ports in my neck, there is a terrifying window of clarity. In those 3 seconds, I am not a sergeant of the angels penitent. I am a ghost trapped in a mountain of scar tissue and gene-enhanced muscle. I feel the cold floor against my soles, and I realize with a sickening jolt that I haven't felt the texture of the world with my own skin in a century. My feet are calloused slabs, the nerves deadened by 1,000 marches across glass-strewn battlefields and radioactive wastes. Then the stimulants hit. The neurochem spreads like liquid ice through my primary and secondary hearts. The world, which was soft and terrifyingly quiet, snaps into a high-definition nightmare. Colors become tactical data. Shadows become potential cover. My pulse stabilizes at a rhythmic, artificial 60 beats per minute. The self is pushed back into a dark corner of my mind, locked away behind walls of psycho-conditioning and hypnotic triggers. I am functional again. I am correct. I lift the chains of contrition from their silver hooks. 40 meters of industrial-grade steel heavy enough to crush a baseline human's ribcage. I drape them over my shoulders, feeling the links bite into the thick gray skin of my black carapace. This is the first ritual. We carry the weight of an empire that is rotting from within, and we are the maggots that keep the carcass moving. I stand in the dark of my cell for exactly 60 seconds, staring at a blank stone wall. I am supposed to be praying. I am supposed to be contemplating the Emperor's light. Instead, I find myself counting the microscopic pits in the stone, wondering if the man who carved this cell is now part of the dust I walk upon. The armor comes next. 2 serfs enter, their movements twitchy and subservient. They are ancient, their bodies augmented with crude bionics just to keep them functional enough to serve. They don't look at my face. To them, I am a living idol, a statue of meat and violence. As they bolt the greaves to my legs and the cuirass to my chest, I feel the neural links stabbing into my spine. The machine spirit of the Mark 7 power armor wakes up with a low-frequency hum that vibrates in my teeth. My vision is replaced by the tactical HUD, scrolling red runes, thermal overlays, ammunition counters. I am no longer a man. I am a tank with a human brain as its central processor. I walk to the training cages. The air in the lower levels of the fortress monastery smells of ozone and old blood. Today I am to break the new batch of neophytes, 12 of them standing in a line, their faces still possessing that unbearable softness of youth. They look at me with awe. They see the gold trim on my pauldrons and the purity seals fluttering on my chest, and they think of glory. They think they are the heroes of a story. They don't realize they are just fuel for a fire that has been burning for 10,000 years. You are nothing, I tell them, my voice distorted into a metallic growl by the Vox grill. You are the dirt beneath the Emperor's boots. Your families are dead. Your names are dust. You exist only to bleed. I put them through the drills. 6 hours of relentless, bone-breaking combat. I watched them stumble, their new oversized bodies still unfamiliar to them. When one of them, a boy with a jagged scar across his brow, drops his training blade, I don't hesitate. I move with a speed that defies my mass, a blurred shadow of ceramite. I strike him, not with a fist, but with the flat of my gauntlet. I feel his jaw shatter through the reinforced padding of his helmet. He hits the floor, and for a moment the HUD in my eyes glitches. A red flicker, a corrupt data packet. For a fraction of a second, I didn't see a neophyte on the floor. I saw a small girl in a tattered dress holding a piece of moldy bread. The image was so vivid, so visceral, that my finger twitched on the trigger guard of my bolter. I stood frozen. The neophyte looked up at me, blood leaking from his Vox unit, his eyes filled with a desperate, pathetic need for approval. But the ghost of the girl remained, superimposed over his broken form. She wasn't looking at me with awe. She was looking at me with a terror so profound it made my secondary heart skip a beat. "Rise," I commanded, but my voice lacked its usual iron. I dismissed them early, a breach of protocol that will surely be noted by the chaplains. I returned to my cell, but I did not enter the meditation trance. Instead, I stood before the small, cracked mirror of polished steel. I stared at my reflection, or what was left of it. The face looking back was a ruin, scarred, pale, and utterly alien. But as I watched, the HUD flickered again. The red runes danced, and for a heartbeat, the eyes in the mirror weren't gray and augmented. They were brown, human, and they were weeping. I touched the cold steel of the mirror, and a terrifying thought clawed its way out of the darkness where I had buried it. What if the conditioning isn't failing? What if it's working perfectly and the monster I've become is finally realizing it has nowhere left to hide? Somewhere in the deep silence of the asteroid fortress, a single chain rattled against the stone. It sounded like a laugh, or a death rattle. The voyage to Chronos Secundus took 6 weeks. Though time in the warp is a treacherous thing, a flickering candle in a storm of unreason. Aboard the strike cruiser Emperor's Reproach, the air is heavy with the scent of incense, machine oil, and the static charge of the Geller field. We live in the belly of a leviathan made of iron and faith, hurtling through a dimension that hates us. My squad, 9th Squad of the 4th Company, spends the transit in the purgatory of preparation. We do not speak of the training incident. We do not speak of the neophyte with the shattered jaw. But I feel their eyes, the cold multi-spectrum lenses of my brothers tracking my every movement. Brother Tyne, whose service record is a bloody tapestry of efficient slaughter, stands near me in the practice cages. He is a mountain of dark ceramite, his movements so synchronized with the ship's vibrations that he seems part of the deck plating itself. He watches me clear a malfunctioning servitor with a combat blade. I am fast, yes, but there is a jaggedness to my strikes that wasn't there a decade ago. It is the friction of a soul rubbing against its cage. "Your rhythm is off, Sergeant." Taine's voice crackles over the private squad link. It is a flat, tonal observation devoid of empathy. To a space marine, a change in rhythm is a symptom of mechanical failure. The apothecaries are standing by for neurocalibration before we reach the drop zone. Shall I log a request? I look at him, or rather at the red glowing eye slits of his helmet. Behind that mask, Thane is a void. He has already chosen the erasure. He is the perfect weapon because there is no one left inside to pull back the blade. "Negative, Thane," I reply, my own voice sounding alien to my ears. "The weapon is tempered. Focus on your own rights." He says nothing more, but the silence between us is no longer the silence of brothers. It is the silence of sentries guarding a ticking bomb. The descent to Chronos Secundus is a violent rebirth. We are strapped into the drop pods, the iron wombs of the Adeptus Astartes. The countdown is a digital heartbeat pulsing in my retinas. Then the explosive bolts fire and gravity becomes a physical enemy. We scream through the atmosphere, the pod's hull glowing white-hot at 3,000 degrees. My organs are compressed against my spine, my dual hearts thumping in a frantic, syncopated rhythm. The stimulants flood my system, heightening my senses until I can hear the individual screams of the metal plates as they groan under the atmospheric pressure. I close my eyes, and for a terrifying second, I am not in a drop pod. I am a child again, trapped in a collapsing hab block on Absalom Prime. The sound of the world ending above me. I see her again, the girl with the bread, standing in the flames of the descent. She isn't screaming, she is waiting. The impact is a hammer blow that should have turned us into a red slurry. The retro thrusters fire milliseconds before the ground rises to meet us, and then the hatches blow outward. We exit into a world of ash and gray. Chronos Secundus is a factory planet, a gargantuan machine dedicated to the production of adamantium. The sky is a bruised purple, choked by the vomit of 10,000 smokestacks. The ground is a carpet of industrial soot and metal shavings. We have landed in a courtyard surrounded by towering manufactorums that look like cathedrals of rust. My HUD immediately begins tagging targets. Red diamonds flicker over the shadows in the windows. Probability counters spin. "Hammer 9, advance," I command. We move in a tight diamond formation, our bolters leveled. The resistance is immediate and pathetic. These are not soldiers, they are workers. Men and women whose skin is stained gray by the factory dust, armed with stolen auto guns and industrial lasers. They fire from behind barricades made of scrap metal and crates. The bullets ping off my pauldrons like hailstones on a roof. I don't even feel the impact. I raise my bolter. The machine spirit of the weapon growls in my mind, a feral hunger for the kill. I pull the trigger. The mass-reactive round travels at supersonic speeds, striking a man in the chest. He doesn't just die, he ceases to be. The explosive charge inside the bullet detonates within his thoracic cavity, turning him into a mist of bone and gore. We clear the first barricade in 11 seconds. As I step over the twisted remains of the scrap wall, I see it. A banner made from a dirty ration sack draped over the body of a woman. It is written in crude, shaking letters. "We are hungry." 3 words that contain more horror than a hive fleet's shadow. My HUD tries to categorize it as insurrectionist propaganda, but the boy from the underhive, the ghost who still breathes inside me, knows better. It isn't propaganda, it's a fact. I find myself looking at the woman's hands. They are small, the fingernails broken and caked with factory grease. She looks like she could have been my sister had I been allowed a life where such words meant something. "Sergeant, contact left," Corvus's voice snaps me back. A group of rebels is flanking us from a catwalk above. I pivot, my armor's servos whining in protest at the sudden movement. I fire a burst, clearing the catwalk in a spray of sparks and blood. But as the bodies fall, one of them catches the light. It is a young boy, no older than 12, clutching a primitive firebomb. He hits the ground with a sickening thud, the bomb shattering and engulfing his small frame in chemical flames. He doesn't die instantly. He thrashes in the ash, a screaming torch. My squad continues the advance, stepping around the burning child as if he were a minor environmental hazard. I stop. I stand over him, the heat of his death fires reflecting off my golden trim. I should put him out of his misery. I should fire a single round and end it. It would be a mercy. But my hands are frozen. The red runes of my HUD are screaming at me. Target neutralized, move, maintain pace. I look at the child and I don't see a rebel. I see myself. I see the beginning and the end of the machine. The boy's eyes find mine through the darkness of my visor. For a second, the screaming stops. He looks at me with a profound, terrifying clarity, as if he can see through the ceramite, through the gene seed, right into the hollow center of my being. He reaches out a charred hand, and in the guttering light of his own end, he whispers something that my Vox grill shouldn't have been able to pick up. A name. A name I haven't heard in 3 centuries. My mother's name. The world tilts. My sensors spike into the red. I feel a surge of bioelectrical feedback from my black carapace, a searing pain that whiteouts my vision. I stumble, my massive armored hand hitting the ash-covered ground. Behind me, I hear the heavy thud of Tyne's boots. He stops. He looks at me, then at the dying boy. The boy is gone now, a blackened husk in the gray dust. Tyne doesn't ask if I'm hurt. He doesn't offer a hand. He raises his bolter and aims it, not at the shadows, but at the back of my head. "The rhythm is broken, Sergeant," he whispers, the Vox link crackling with a cold final judgment. And the machine does not tolerate a broken cog. Thane's bolter hummed, a low-frequency vibration that I felt through my own armor, a mechanical threat from a brother who was no longer a brother. The muzzle remained locked on the back of my cranium, the targeting laser a red needle prickling against my tactical display. "The rhythm is broken, Sergeant," he repeated, his voice as hollow as the vacuum of space. He wasn't angry. He was merely observing a malfunction. In his eyes, behind the lenses of his helm, I had ceased to be a commander and had become a structural hazard. I stood there, knee-deep in the ash of a child who had whispered a ghost's name, and for the first time in 3 centuries, I didn't care if the trigger was pulled. The self that had been drowning for years was finally breaking the surface, gasping for air in a room filled with poison. "Hammer 9, status report." Chaplain Morris's voice cut through the private squad link like a serrated blade. The interference was thick, distorted by the planet's magnetic storms, but his authority was absolute. Tyne didn't flinch, but the muzzle of his weapon lowered by a fraction of a degree. "Hammer 9 is transitioning to the primary objective," I voxed back, my voice steady only because the neurostimulants forced it to be. I didn't look back at Thane. I didn't have to. I could hear the heavy thud of his boots as he resumed his position in the formation. The standoff was over, but the execution had merely been delayed. I was a dead man walking in a suit of gold-trimmed ceramite, a ghost haunting my own funeral. We moved deeper into Manufacturum District 7. The scale of the industry was staggering, a landscape of rusted iron cathedrals and pipes as thick as the trunks of ancient trees. Every surface was coated in a layer of adamantine dust, a toxic byproduct of the planet's output that turned the air into a shimmering, abrasive haze. We passed rows of worker habs, metal boxes stacked 60 high, where families lived and died without ever seeing a sun that wasn't filtered through 1,000 layers of smog. This was the Imperium we defended, a sprawling, suffocating machine that ground human lives into the grease needed to keep its gears turning. I looked at the dark windows of the habs and saw the reflection of my own armor. I wasn't their savior. I was just a bigger gear, designed to crush any part of the machine that tried to stop. The resistance intensified as we approached the central hub. These were the hardened rebels, former PDF soldiers who had seen the starvation in the lower hives and chosen treason over slow death. They had heavy stubbers and improvised las cannons. They fought with a desperation that our tactical manuals described as fanatical delusion. But I knew the truth now. It wasn't a delusion. It was the clarity of those who have nothing left to lose. We breached the outer gates of the control center in a hail of bolter fire. Brother Lucian used a multi-melta to turn the reinforced doors into white-hot slag. We entered the main hall, a vaulted space filled with the humming of massive logic engines. "Clear the floor. Leave no witnesses," I ordered. The words felt like ash in my throat. We moved through the facility with clinical precision. Every rebel who stood their ground was systematically dismantled by mass reactive rounds. The hall became a slaughterhouse of red mist and spent casings. But then, as we reached the upper observation deck, the gunfire ceased. The rebels here weren't firing, they were kneeling. Dozens of them huddled around a central terminal, their heads bowed. In the center stood an old woman, her hair as white as the ash outside, her skin a map of scars and factory burns. She wasn't holding a weapon, she was holding a data slate. "Sergeant Cale Voranis," she said, her voice amplified by the room's internal vox. She didn't sound afraid, she sounded like a judge reading a sentence. "We knew you would come. The angels penitent always send their finest monsters to clean up the mess." I signaled for my squad to hold their fire. Tane's bolter was twitching, his combat logic screaming for a target lock. "You are in violation of Imperial Decree 4 Beta," I stated, the ritual words sounding increasingly absurd. "The production of adamantine must resume. Compliance is mandatory." The woman laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "Production? Look at the screens, Angel. Look at what you're protecting." She gestured to the massive monitors lining the walls. I looked. My HUD tried to ignore the data, but I overrode the filters. The screens didn't show production quotas, they showed the tithe records. Not for metal, but for biological assets. Every year, Chronos Secundus didn't just ship out adamantine, it shipped out thousands of children, the tithe of the firstborn. I saw the destination codes. Most were for the Scolam Progenium, but one set of codes, the ones highlighted in red, belonged to our chapter. The Angels Penitent didn't recruit from the finest specimens. We harvested the starving children of our own industrial worlds, taking the ones who were too hungry to resist, then wiping their memories so they wouldn't remember the families we left to rot. "You aren't a hero, Cale," the woman whispered, stepping toward me. The sensors in my helm zoomed in on her face. Her eyes were brown, the same brown I had seen in the mirror 3 centuries ago. "You were the firstborn of Hive Primus, Sector 4. You were taken during the Great Famine. Your mother died holding the bread she tried to steal for you. Do you remember now? Or did they bleach your brain too thoroughly?" The memory hit me like a physical blow. A sensation of heat, the smell of burnt yeast, and a woman's face. This woman's face, younger, screaming as black-armored giants dragged a boy into the sky. The boy was me. The woman was the girl from the barricade, my sister who had grown old while I stayed a monster. I looked at her, and the ceramite of my gauntlets felt like it was melting. I reached out, a gesture of recognition that bypassed every protocol. "Silence the heretic!" Tane's voice exploded over the vox. He didn't wait for my command. He fired. The bolter round caught the woman in the chest. She didn't scream. She just vanished in a spray of blood and data slate fragments. The monitors flickered and died. I stood there, my hand still extended toward the empty space where my sister had been. The silence that followed was the heaviest thing I had ever carried. Tane stepped forward, his boots crunching on the glass. "Objective complete. The source of the misinformation has been eliminated." I turned to him, and the red runes in my vision turned a blinding, crystalline white. I didn't feel the stimulants anymore. I didn't feel the armor. I only felt the cold, hard weight of a 300-year-old lie. I raised my bolter and leveled it at Tyne's chest plate. Was it misinformation, Tyne? Or was it a mirror? Through the vox, I heard the sound of someone breathing. It wasn't my squad, it was Chaplain Morris watching everything through our internal feeds. "Brother Sergeant Voranis," the chaplain's voice was a low, terrifying growl. "Look at your hands. Look at what you have done. The chains are broken, Cale. And you know what we do with broken things." Suddenly, the control center's lights flickered to a deep, bloody red. The logic engines began to scream. A secret command had been triggered. The facility wasn't just a control center. It was a bomb. The countdown didn't appear on the screens. It pulsed in the red emergency lighting of the hall, a rhythmic throb of impending annihilation. The logic engines of the manufacturer were no longer humming. They were screaming, a high-pitched mechanical wail that bypassed my auditory filters and vibrated directly in my skull. I stood paralyzed, my bolter still leveled at Tane's chest plate. The blood of the woman who had been my sister, the woman who had aged and suffered while I stayed frozen in a golden lie, was still damp on the glass beneath my boots. Tyne didn't move. He didn't even raise his weapon to defend himself. He simply stood there, a statue of unthinking loyalty, watching the runes of our internal HUD turn from tactical data into a death sentence. "The facility is primed for purification, Sergeant," Tane's voice crackled, devoid of any tremor. "The chaplain has deemed this sector compromised. We are the flame that cleanses the rot. Do not struggle against the inevitable." I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see a space marine. I saw a hollow suit of armor, inhabited by nothing but a ghost of an order. I lunged. I didn't fire. The distance was too short, the anger too raw for a clean kill. I slammed my shoulder into his chest, the impact of two half-ton giants colliding sounding like a thunderclap in the echoing hall. We crashed through the command console, sparks erupting in a chaotic spray as we tumbled into the pit of the logic engines. My power armor's servos screamed in protest, the artificial muscle fibers straining as I pinned Tyne to the vibrating deck plating. I raised my gauntlet, my fist glowing with the discharge of a built-in power cell, and I struck his helmet. Again and again. The ceramite cracked. The red lenses of his helm shattered, revealing the pale, scarred flesh beneath. He didn't scream. He didn't even try to push me off. He just looked at me with his one remaining eye, an eye that was cloudy with cataracts and chemical film, an eye that hadn't seen a sunrise in 300 years. "Why?" "Kale," he whispered, not through the vox, but through his own broken jaw. "Function, or death. There is nothing else." I stopped. My fist was poised for the killing blow, but the words hit me harder than any bolter round. He was right. In the world they had built for us, there was no third option. There was only the machine, or the scrap heap. "Brother Sergeant Varanus." Chaplain Morris's voice was no longer a growl. It was a cold, pitying sigh that filled the interior of my helmet. "The tragedy of the angel is not that he falls, but that he remembers the heights. You have peered behind the veil, Kale. You have seen the meat grinder that feeds the Imperium. Did you truly think we were different? Did you think a chapter could survive 10,000 years on glory and honor alone? We are the tithe takers. We are the tax that humanity pays for its continued existence. And the tax must be collected in blood." A massive explosion rocked the lower levels of the manufacturum. The floor buckled, the deck plating peeling away like burnt skin. I lost my grip on Tyne as a plume of superheated steam erupted between us. The world turned into a whiteout of heat and noise. I felt myself falling, my armor's stabilizers trying and failing to find purchase as I plummeted through the shattered floor into the industrial bowels of the planet. I hit something hard, a massive cooling pipe, then tumbled into a river of chemical sludge and ash. My HUD flickered and died. The tactical overlays, the ammunition counters, the red runes, all of it vanished, leaving me in a darkness so profound it felt like being buried alive. I lay there for a long time. My primary heart was struggling, a jagged piece of shrapnel having pierced the chest plate and lodged itself in the muscle. My secondary heart was compensating, but the pain was a dull, rhythmic throb that reminded me I was still biological, still fragile. I reached up and tore my helmet off. The seal broke with a hiss of pressurized air, and for the first time in decades, I breathed the atmosphere of a planet with my own lungs. It was poison. It tasted of sulfur, burnt plastic, and the metallic tang of blood. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever felt. I dragged myself out of the sludge, my armor clanking heavily against the stone. I was in the underlevels, a labyrinth of pipes and shadows beneath the factory floor. Here, the waste of the planet was discarded, both chemical and human. I looked around and saw them. In the dim light of the overhead fires, I saw the mounds. Not of ash, but of bone. Thousands upon thousands of small skeletons discarded like broken parts. The tithe. The children who hadn't survived the pre-screening. The ones who were too weak to become angels, but too numerous to return home. They were the foundation upon which Chronos Secundus was built. I found a small alcove, a crawl space between two massive furnaces, and I slumped against the wall. I reached into a hidden compartment in my belt and pulled out the one thing I hadn't reported to the chaplains. The dirty ration sack banner I had taken from the barricade. "We are hungry." I held it in my scarred, oversized hands, and the tears I had seen in the mirror finally came. I wept for the boy from Absalom Prime. I wept for my sister who had died with my brother's bullet in her heart. I wept for the millions I had killed to protect a machine that fed on children. A shadow moved at the edge of the furnace light. I didn't reach for my weapon. I didn't have the strength left to care. A figure stepped into the light. It wasn't Tyne. It wasn't a rebel. It was a child. A boy no more than 6 years old, his skin gray with ash, his eyes wide with a terror that was beyond words. He looked at me, a broken giant in a suit of gold and blood. And he didn't run. He reached into his tattered tunic and pulled out a small, hard biscuit, a ration. He held it out to me, his hand trembling so violently that the biscuit rattled against his palm. Are you the Emperor?" he whispered, his voice a tiny thread in the roaring of the furnaces. I looked at the biscuit. I looked at the boy. I felt the weight of 347 years of slaughter pressing down on my chest, heavier than any suit of power armor. I reached out, my massive blood-stained hand closing gently, so gently around his tiny fingers. I didn't take the bread. I just held his hand. "No, little one," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I am the monster he sent to protect you, and I am so sorry." A sudden sharp chime echoed in the darkness. It wasn't the sound of the furnaces. It was my internal Vox link somehow still functioning despite the damage. But it wasn't a broadcast from the Emperor's reproach. It was a signal from a different frequency, one used only by the Inquisition. A message was looping, encrypted in a code I shouldn't have been able to read, but the self that was now wide awake understood it perfectly. Subject 4 Alpha confirmed as aware. Initiate protocol penance, leave no witnesses on the surface, purge the chapter. The ground shook again, but this time it wasn't an explosion from within, it was an orbital strike. The Inquisition wasn't here to save us, they were here to erase the evidence, and I was the biggest piece of evidence left alive. The sky above Chronos Secundus didn't just fall, it shattered. The first wave of orbital strikes hit the northern manufacturum spires, and even down here in the lightless guts of the world, the vibration was enough to liquefy the teeth. The Inquisition's protocol penance was no surgical strike. It was a cauterization. They weren't just killing the rebels, they were burning the ledger, the witnesses, and the weapons that had failed to keep the secret. I sat in the darkness, the starving boy's hand still trembling in mine, and I felt the tectonic plates of my own reality grinding to a halt. The self I had reclaimed was a fragile thing, a flickering candle in a hurricane of divine wrath, but it was mine. For the first time in 300 years, I wasn't waiting for an order. I was waiting for the end. "Emperor, is the sky screaming?" the boy asked. His voice was a dry rasp, the sound of a throat that had forgotten the taste of water. I looked up at the ceiling where massive cracks were spider-webbing through the ferro-concrete. Above us, the Emperor's reproach was likely being torn apart by inquisitorial frigates, its crew of silent serfs and brain-bleached giants dying in the cold void. I thought of Tyne, dying with my fist marks on his helm, and I felt a strange hollow pity. He had died a tool. I would die a man, even if that man was a monster. I reached out with my free hand, the one not holding the boys, and tore the golden icons from my chest plate. The imperial eagle, the chapter's crest, the purity seals. I ripped them away until only the bare, scarred ceramite remained. I was a sergeant of nothing. I was a brother to no one. "The sky is just changing, little one," I whispered, my voice sounding like gravel grinding in a lead box. I stood up, the movement a symphony of agonizing protests from my damaged armor and shattered ribs. I scooped the boy up, tucking him into the crook of my arm. He weighed nothing, a handful of bone and desperate hope. "We need to move. The dark is coming, and it has brought the fire." I began to limp through the labyrinth of pipes, heading deeper into the shadows. If the Inquisition was using cyclonic torpedoes, there was no safety. But my tactical instincts, the only part of the machine that refused to die, pushed me toward the lowest geothermal vents. The heat became a physical weight. The air was a thick soup of toxic steam and the metallic tang of ionizing radiation. I passed more bone piles, the discarded tithe of my chapter, and this time I didn't look away. I memorized every tiny skull, every shattered rib. I would carry them to the pyre. Suddenly, my internal vox crackled to life, a burst of static that made my remaining ear bleed. It wasn't an encrypted signal this time. It was a broadcast on all local frequencies, a raw, unconditioned scream. "This is Chaplain Morris to all remaining elements of the Fourth Company. The test is upon us. The Inquisition is the scalpel, but we are the cancer. Do not resist the purge. Embrace the final penitence. For the Emperor we were created. In his name we shall be erased." The madness of it was breathtaking. Morris wasn't surprised. He had invited this. The chains of contrition weren't just a ritual. They were a suicide note written in the blood of 10,000 years. The chapter hadn't failed. It had reached its logical conclusion. The weapon had become aware of its own filth, and it had called for the hammer to strike. I stopped in the middle of a massive pressure vent chamber, the boy clutching my neck seal, and I laughed. It was a harsh, broken sound that echoed off the damp walls. We weren't angels of death. We were the evidence of a god's mistake. A shadow detached itself from the steam at the far end of the chamber. I didn't have to check the HUD I no longer possessed. I knew the silhouette. Chaplain Morris stood there, his skull helm glowing in the red light of the geothermal fires. His Crozius Arcanum, the mace of his office, was dark, its power cell drained or deactivated. He looked at me, then at the child in my arms. He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't recite a litany. He simply stood there, an ancient, dying giant at the end of the world. "You chose to remember, Kale," Morris said, his voice stripped of its vox amplification. It was just an old man's voice, weary and thin. "I told you it would be a suffering. Was it worth it? To see the truth before the fire takes you?" I walked toward him, my boots clanging on the metal grating. I stopped 3 meters away. "It was worth it," I said, looking him in the eye slits. "Because for 1 hour, I wasn't yours. I wasn't the Emperor's. I was just me." Morris nodded slowly, the movement almost a bow. "Then you have achieved the only true victory possible in this millennium. You have died before they could kill you." The ground beneath us buckled. The geothermal vents began to vent plasma, a blinding, white-hot roar that illuminated the chamber with the light of a dying star. The Inquisition had struck the planet's core. Chronos Secundus was turning inside out. I looked down at the boy in my arms. He wasn't crying anymore. He was staring at the plasma fire with a wide-eyed wonder, as if he were seeing the sun for the first time. I realized then that he didn't know he was about to die. He thought the light was beautiful. "Kale," Morris whispered, stepping into the path of the encroaching plasma. "There is one thing I never told you. One secret even the Inquisition doesn't know. The gene seed. The blood in our veins. It didn't come from a Primarch. Not one of the loyal ones." He turned back to me, the white light beginning to char the edges of his black armor. "We weren't forged to save humanity. We were forged to remind it why it should be afraid of the dark." The floor vanished. A wall of pure energy tore through the chamber, vaporizing everything it touched. In that final microsecond, as the heat reached my skin and the boy's hand went cold in mine, I didn't think of the chapter. I didn't think of the Emperor. I thought of the bread, the simple human smell of yeast and life. I held the boy tighter, shielding him with a body that was already turning to ash, and I whispered a name. Not the name of a god, not the name of a sergeant. I whispered the name of a boy from the Underhive who had once cupped a kitten in his hands and marveled that anything could be so fragile. The light swallowed us. There was no pain, only a sudden, profound silence, and in that silence a final, terrifying thought flickered. If we were the monsters sent to protect them, who will protect them from the ones who sent us? The question went unanswered as Chronos Secundus became a new, short-lived star in the cold, unfeeling void of the 41st millennium. Somewhere in a dark archive on Holy Terra, a single candle was blown out and a name was struck from the record. Kale Varanus. Asset deleted. The machine continues. The gears turn. And somewhere another child is being dragged into the sky, screaming for a mother who is already forgotten.